Ethan had never imagined he would stand in front of a palace that seemed to touch the stars. The walls were made of a shimmering crystal-like material that reflected light in every direction, painting the grand corridors in colors he could barely name. Alien statues lined the halls, their features both beautiful and strange, with tall limbs and intricate markings that glowed faintly under the palace lights. Every step he took echoed softly, a sound that made him feel both small and important at the same time. He had been chosen to represent humanity in this alien empire, Zithuria. The honor was immense, and so was the responsibility. Humans had never been to the heart of this civilization before. While they had communicated with Zithurians through messages and cautious trade agreements, no human had ever been allowed into the palace itself. Ethan felt a weight pressing on his shoulders, a mixture of excitement and fear. His escort, a tall alien with silvery skin and sharp features, guided him through the labyrinthine halls. Every now and then, Ethan caught glimpses of other humans who had come before him, though he knew few had returned. The palace was alive with movement. Servants glided across the corridors with silent precision, and advisors in flowing robes whispered in languages Ethan could not understand. Their eyes lingered on him, some curious, some wary, and some calculating in ways he could not yet read. Finally, they reached the grand audience chamber. Ethan paused at the threshold. The room was enormous, far larger than any hall on Earth. Crystal pillars stretched from floor to ceiling, catching the light and scattering it like 1,000 tiny suns. A raised dais held a throne carved from a single piece of translucent material, glowing faintly from within. Seated on it was the alien queen, Zyralia. Her presence alone seemed to command the room. Even from a distance, Ethan could feel the authority radiating from her, a quiet power that demanded attention and respect. Zyralia's eyes were like molten silver, sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. She regarded Ethan with a mixture of curiosity and caution, studying him as if weighing his worth silently. Behind her stood a young girl, the queen's daughter. She was smaller than the adults in the room, but there was a certain intensity in her silver-blue eyes that made Ethan pause. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of her, as though she had been trained to remain unnoticed. "Ethan of Earth," the queen said finally, her voice smooth and deep, echoing slightly in the vast chamber. "You have come far to meet us. Know that your presence here is watched carefully and your actions will not be forgotten." Ethan bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I am honored to be here. I only wish to understand your people and learn how humans and Zithurians can live in peace and friendship." His words felt small in the grandeur of the hall, but he spoke with sincerity, hoping it would reach her. The queen's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. She said nothing else, but her gaze did not waver. Ethan sensed that every word, every movement he made was being weighed. After the formal greetings, he was allowed to walk a little within the chamber. He noticed the courtiers exchanging glances, some leaning forward, whispering. There was a tension in the air as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. Ethan wondered what that might be, but he did not have time to dwell. Then he saw her, the young princess Liara. She was no longer just standing behind her mother. Her eyes were fixed on him, curious and bright. She took a hesitant step forward, then another, as if drawn by something she did not fully understand. Ethan gave her a small, reassuring smile. He did not know why, but something about her expression stirred something inside him. A connection, sudden and unexplainable, formed between them. For a moment, Ethan thought she might retreat, but instead she ran toward him. Courtiers gasped. Servants froze mid-step. Even the queen's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Ethan could hardly believe what was happening. Liara reached him and threw her arms around his waist, hugging him tightly. Time seemed to slow. The room, filled with grandeur and tension, felt still. The entire palace in that moment seemed to hold its breath. Ethan froze, unsure of how to react. His mind raced, thinking he must have made some terrible mistake. But then he felt the warmth of her small body, the sincerity of her gesture, and he understood. She was not acting out of defiance. She was simply reaching out, seeking comfort or friendship or perhaps both. He lowered his arms slowly, returning the hug gently. Courtiers whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. No one had ever seen such a thing in the palace. No one had ever seen a royal child embrace a human with such freedom. Even the queen did not speak, her expression unreadable, yet her eyes followed the interaction with intense scrutiny. After a few moments, Liara stepped back, her eyes shining, a smile breaking across her face for the first time. "I like you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a simple sentence, but in the palace it carried weight. Ethan smiled back. "I like you too, Liara," he said gently, hoping the sincerity in his voice would reach her. The room seemed to hum with quiet shock. Courtiers murmured, servants exchanged startled glances, and even the queen's advisors looked uneasy. The simple act of a hug had broken the expected order of the palace. For centuries, the royals had maintained strict distance from outsiders, especially humans. And yet here was the princess, ignoring protocol entirely, showing emotion in its purest form. After the initial shock, Ethan was escorted to a quieter part of the palace to speak with the queen's chief advisor. The advisor was tall, with piercing green eyes and skin that shimmered faintly. He studied Ethan carefully before speaking. "Your actions and the princess's behavior are unprecedented," the advisor said. "Liara has been kept isolated for her protection and training. No one has ever approached her without fear or hesitation. And yet she ran to you. Do you understand the implications?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand, but I did not do anything to hurt her. I only smiled at her." The advisor regarded him silently for a moment, then nodded. "It is not your actions alone. It is your presence. You are human, and humans are unpredictable to us. Liara's reaction may be a sign of her trust in you, or it may bring challenges we are not ready to face." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. He had not come here to cause problems, only to build bridges. But it was clear that his simple act of kindness had already shaken the foundations of the palace in a small way. Later, Ethan was allowed to walk the gardens with Liara under the careful watch of attendants. The gardens were unlike anything he had ever seen. Giant crystalline trees sparkled in the sunlight, and streams of iridescent water flowed in patterns that seemed almost alive. Liara ran ahead sometimes, then came back to his side, laughing. Her joy was contagious. They played small games, using gestures and simple words to communicate. Ethan shared stories of Earth, of oceans, forests, and the vast blue sky. Liara listened, her eyes wide with wonder, asking questions with curiosity and enthusiasm. For the first time, Ethan saw her not as a princess, but as a child full of life and wonder, longing for connection. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, Ethan and Liara sat by a sparkling pond. "I've never felt this way before," Liara said quietly. "I've never had a friend." Ethan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Everyone deserves a friend, Liara. You are brave and kind and smart, and anyone who sees that will be lucky to know you." Liara smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. In a world so vast, so strange, he had found a connection that was real, unshakable, and meaningful. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the queen observed from afar. She remained silent, her expression unreadable, but Ethan knew she was watching closely. Liara had chosen him, and that choice, simple as it seemed, was about to change more than just their lives. As night fell, the palace glittered under countless lights, and Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. The bond he had formed with Liara would ripple through the corridors of power, shaking traditions and testing expectations. But for now, he held on to the moment. cherishing the small human warmth that had brought a smile to the alien princess's face, and frozen an entire palace in all the morning light spilled into the crystalline halls of the palace, reflecting off every surface in a dazzling array of colors. Ethan awoke in the guest chambers assigned to him, the memory of yesterday's events still vivid in his mind. The hug from Liara, the alien princess, was not something he could forget. It had felt natural, genuine, and unexpectedly comforting. Yet he knew that within the palace, such an act was far from ordinary. The courtiers' shocked expressions and whispers were proof enough of that. After dressing, Ethan made his way to the main corridors, where attendants moved with quiet precision. Today, he was scheduled to meet the Queen formally to discuss the purpose of his mission. But before that meeting, Liara appeared, her small figure slipping through the hallways with surprising grace. Her eyes found his immediately, sparkling with curiosity and excitement. "Good morning," Ethan said gently, lowering himself to her level. "Did you sleep well?" Liara nodded, her expression bright but thoughtful. "I dreamed of your world," she said softly. "The oceans, the forests, you told me stories and I could see them in my mind." Ethan smiled. "I'm glad. One day maybe you can see them for real." She tilted her head, considering this before her smile returned. "Will you tell me more today?" Ethan nodded. "Of course." He noticed the way she looked at him, not with fear or formality but with trust. It was unusual for a princess in this palace, and he understood the significance. Liara had been raised with rules, isolation, and constant supervision. She had never shown genuine affection to outsiders before. The fact that she had chosen him was extraordinary. They walked together toward the gardens, where the air was fresh and the stream sparkled with iridescent light. Liara led the way, occasionally glancing back at him to ensure he was following. The palace, usually a place of strict order, seemed softer here, filled with colors, sounds, and life. Ethan realized that this was where the princess felt free, and he was grateful to be part of that small world. As they sat near a stream, Ethan began to tell her about human traditions, about the ways people celebrated and worked together, about music, laughter, and even mistakes that people learned from. Liara listened intently, her eyes wide, absorbing every word. She asked questions constantly, sometimes simple, sometimes profound, revealing a mind eager to understand not just words but ideas. "You are very brave," she said suddenly, looking at him with a seriousness that surprised him. "Even when the palace, everyone watches, you do not seem afraid." Ethan thought about that. "Fear is natural," he said carefully. "But when you care about someone or when you want to do the right thing, it can make you stronger. You can be brave even when things are difficult." Liara considered this quietly. "I wish I could be brave like that, but the palace, it is full of rules. I must be careful, they watch everything." Ethan reached out and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You already are brave. You came to me yesterday. That took courage." The princess smiled faintly, her eyes softening. "I think I like being with you. You are different." Ethan felt warmth in his chest. "I like being with you too." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the sound of footsteps. A palace attendant approached, bowing low. "Princess Liara," the attendant said, "the queen requests your presence." Liara sighed, but there was no fear in her expression, only acceptance. She glanced at Ethan. "I must go," she said softly. "I'll be here," Ethan replied. "I'll wait for you." She gave him a small nod and hurried away, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. He understood that the palace was a place of constant observation, and that any connection he formed here was unusual and delicate. Yet, he could not deny the bond growing between him and Liara. Later, Ethan was escorted to the queen's private chambers. Zyralia sat on her throne, her posture as perfect and regal as ever. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, fixed on him the moment he entered. Ethan bowed respectfully, his mind alert for any sign of disapproval or challenge. "Ethan of Earth," the queen said, her voice calm but carrying authority, You have interacted with my daughter. I have observed your behavior and the results are unexpected. You must understand the rules here. Your presence and your actions have consequences that extend beyond personal feelings. Ethan met her gaze steadily. Your Majesty, I mean no harm. I only wish to build trust, to show that humans can be respectful and honorable. The Queen studied him for a long moment, then leaned back slightly. Trust is earned slowly, and yet Liara has chosen to show openness toward you. This is unprecedented. My daughter is not used to forming bonds outside her family, and especially not with humans. You must understand the delicacy of this situation. I do, Ethan said. I will be careful. I only want to be a friend to her. The Queen's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained sharp. We shall see. Actions more than words will determine the path forward. You may continue your interactions with Liara, but you will be monitored. Any breach of trust could have serious consequences. Ethan nodded. I understand, Your Majesty. After the audience, he returned to the gardens where Liara was waiting. Her face brightened at the sight of him, and she ran to him again, this time not as a surprise, but with the confidence of someone who had chosen a friend. Ethan laughed softly and caught her in his arms, holding her close for a brief moment before letting her step back. They spent the day exploring the gardens, sharing stories and learning from one another. Liara showed him hidden corners of the palace grounds, places where rare flowers glowed softly and fountains trickled with luminous water. Ethan marveled at the beauty, but more than that, he was amazed by Liara's knowledge of her world. Despite her age, she understood complex systems of plants, light, and water, and explained them with curiosity and clarity. You see, humans and Zithurians are not so different, Ethan said at one point, smiling. We both notice things, ask questions, and want to understand the world. Liara nodded. Yes, but sometimes the rules of the palace make it hard to do what you want. I have to be careful. I know, Ethan replied, but even in a place full of rules, we can find small moments of freedom like this. He gestured to the garden, to the bright flowers and flowing streams. Liara smiled, leaning slightly closer. I am glad you are here, Ethan. I feel happy. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and violet, the princess grew quiet. Ethan noticed the change in her demeanor and asked gently, What is it, Liara? She hesitated, then said softly, I am afraid. The palace, some people do not like humans. They watch closely and I cannot always protect myself. I am small, and sometimes it feels like the rules are stronger than I am. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You are not alone, Liara. I will be here and I will help you however I can. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting even when you are afraid. Liara's eyes shone with a mixture of relief and wonder. You make it sound simple, Ethan smiled. It is not always simple, but it is possible. Their moment was interrupted by the distant sound of palace activity. Courtiers whispered, and attendants hurried past them. Ethan realized that even in the gardens, they were not completely free from observation. But for now, they had each other's trust, and that was a start. That evening, Ethan was called to dine with the Queen and her advisors. The hall was vast, with tables set in perfect symmetry. Alien dishes glowed with soft light, and the aroma was unlike anything Ethan had ever experienced. Despite the elegance, he felt the weight of expectation. Every gesture, every word, every bite would be noticed. During the meal, the Queen spoke of politics, trade, and alliances. Ethan listened carefully, contributing when appropriate but mostly observing. He understood that this was part of his education, understanding not only the people, but the intricate systems of power that governed them. Liara sat quietly at the far end, occasionally glancing at him with a small smile. Her presence reminded Ethan why he was here, why it mattered that humans and Zithurians could understand one another. She trusted him, and that trust was a fragile gift that he could not take lightly. As the meal concluded, The queen gave a small nod toward Ethan. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but he recognized it as acknowledgement. She had observed his behavior, his respect for her daughter, and she had approved, at least for now. Afterward, Ethan returned to his chambers, reflecting on the day. He realized that his connection with Liara was growing stronger, and that bond had the power to change not only their lives, but perhaps the palace itself. He felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. This was more than diplomacy. It was friendship, trust, and the potential for something greater. As night fell, the palace glittered under countless lights. Ethan looked out over the crystalline gardens, thinking of the young princess who had dared to run to him and hug him in front of everyone. That single act had shifted the balance of the palace, challenging old traditions and opening the door to a future where humans and Zethurians might truly understand one another. Ethan knew that challenges lay ahead. The palace was full of rules, and not everyone would accept him so easily. But for now, he allowed himself a small moment of hope. Liara had chosen him, and in a place as vast and controlled as this, that choice was more powerful than any law, any custom, or any decree. The first step of friendship had been taken, and the ripple of that moment was only beginning. The morning in the palace began with a calm that felt almost fragile. Ethan awoke to the soft light filtering through the crystal walls, reflecting colors that danced across his room. Even after days in the palace, he was still captivated by its beauty, but he knew that appearances could be deceiving. Behind the brilliance and grandeur, the palace was a place of rules, politics, and unseen tensions. One wrong move could have consequences far beyond what he could imagine. Liara was waiting for him in the gardens. She had become more confident, more willing to step outside the rigid protocols that had defined her life. As Ethan approached, she waved, her small smile brightening the morning. "Good morning, Ethan," she called, running to him. "Good morning, Liara," he said warmly, crouching slightly so she could reach him easily. "Did you sleep well?" Liara nodded. "I dreamed of yesterday. The stories you told me, I could almost see them in my mind again." Ethan smiled. "Then let's make today another story worth remembering." They spent the morning walking through the palace gardens, sharing small games and simple laughter. Liara ran ahead, then returned, always making sure Ethan was nearby. Each day, their bond grew stronger. Ethan taught her about human customs, games, and the concept of trust between friends. Liara, in return, shared with him the secrets of her palace, the hidden corners, the quiet pools, and the glowing flowers that only bloomed at certain hours. But even in this peace, Ethan could feel the tension that lingered beneath the surface. Courtiers watched them closely, exchanging quiet whispers. Some eyes held curiosity, others doubt, and a few were plainly suspicious. It was clear that not everyone in the palace approved of a human gaining the princess's trust. As they rested by a small crystalline fountain, Liara leaned against Ethan. "Do you think the queen will ever truly trust you?" she asked softly. Ethan considered this. Trust is not given lightly in any world. "But I hope that through actions, patience, and honesty, she will see that my intentions are good." Liara nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I trust you." That simple declaration, pure and unguarded, strengthened Ethan's resolve. He knew that protecting Liara's trust was as important as any diplomatic mission he had ever undertaken. Later that day, an urgent message summoned Ethan to the Queen's chambers. Courtiers and advisors were already gathered, their expressions a mixture of concern and anticipation. The palace was tense, and Ethan sensed that something significant was unfolding. Zyralia's eyes, sharp and commanding, fell on him as he entered. "Ethan of Earth," she said, her voice calm but authoritative, "a challenge has arisen. A faction from outside the palace questions my authority and threatens the stability of the empire. You have observed the world through human eyes and understand courage in ways many here do not. Your insight may prove useful." Ethan nodded respectfully. "I will do my best, Your Majesty." The Queen gestured toward a detailed map displayed on a crystal table. "These factions believe my reign is weak. They plan to act swiftly. I will require careful planning to protect the palace and my daughter. Your perspective, human as it may be, could help." Ethan studied the map. He noticed patterns and strategies that were familiar from Earth's history lessons, ways to predict movement, create diversions, and neutralize threats without direct confrontation. He shared his ideas carefully, explaining tactics that balanced caution with courage. The advisors listened intently, some skeptical, some surprised. Liara appeared behind him, her expression a mixture of fear and hope. "Ethan," she whispered, clutching his sleeve, "please keep us safe." Ethan knelt to meet her gaze. "I promise, Liara. I will do everything I can." The hours passed in strategy and discussion. Ethan's suggestions were implemented, blending human ingenuity with Zethurian resources. While the palace prepared for potential conflict, Liara stayed close, offering small words of encouragement and quiet smiles that reminded Ethan of what he was protecting. As night fell, the first signs of the outside faction appeared on the horizon. They were vast and intimidating, with advanced ships that reflected the faint starlight. The palace defenses activated, but Ethan's plan required precise timing and coordination. Courtiers and advisors followed his instructions with caution, adapting human strategies to alien technology. The first wave of the intruders approached the palace gates. Ethan coordinated signals, positioning defenders strategically. Liara watched from a safe distance, her hands gripping the railing as she observed the tension unfold. Ethan could see the worry in her eyes, but also the trust. That trust was a powerful force, and it strengthened him. As the conflict began, Ethan stayed calm, giving clear instructions and encouraging the defenders. His presence reassured the palace guards, who had never seen a human lead with such confidence. The outside faction advanced aggressively, but they were met with clever tactics that forced them into disarray. Ethan's predictions proved accurate. Small, calculated diversions created openings for defenders, minimizing harm while stopping the attack. Liara, unable to stay in her chamber, ran to the edge of the observation platform. "Ethan, you're amazing," she shouted, her voice filled with awe and fear. Ethan glanced up and gave her a small smile. "Stay safe, Liara. That's the most important thing." By dawn, the threat had been neutralized. The outside faction retreated, confused and disorganized, unable to overcome the combined human and Zethurian strategies. The palace was safe, and the bond between Ethan and Liara had been proven not just emotional, but vital. The courtiers were stunned. A human had led them through crisis with bravery and intelligence that even the most skilled Zethurians had not anticipated. Murmurs of amazement spread through the halls, and the queen observed silently, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. Liara ran to Ethan, throwing herself into his arms again. "You did it! You protected us!" she exclaimed, her voice trembling with relief and joy. Ethan hugged her gently. "We did it together. Your courage helped too, Liara. Never forget that." The queen finally stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. She approached Ethan and looked at him closely. "Ethan of Earth," she said, her voice steady, "you have demonstrated not only bravery but loyalty and wisdom. You have protected my daughter and the palace without seeking reward or recognition. That is a rare quality, even among my own people." Ethan bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, it was my duty and my honor." Zyralia's expression softened, and for the first time she allowed a small, genuine smile. "Liara has chosen a friend wisely. You have earned more than trust, you have earned respect. The palace and I will remember this day." Liara clung to Ethan, her smile bright. Courtiers and advisors watched in silence, realizing that a human had changed the dynamics of the palace forever. Where once there had been rules, distance, and caution, now there was openness, trust, and the possibility of a new future. In the days that followed, Ethan continued to spend time with Liara, sharing stories, laughter, and simple games. The Queen allowed them moments of freedom, recognizing the positive influence he had on her daughter. Courtiers adjusted to the presence of a human who had proven his courage and loyalty, and the palace slowly adapted to the idea that outsiders could be allies rather than threats. Ethan understood that this was only the beginning. The palace was vast, the empire complex, and challenges would continue to arise. But he also knew that the bond he had formed with Liara was a force stronger than fear, suspicion, or tradition. It was built on trust, respect, and shared courage. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the glowing gardens, Liara leaned against him. "Do you think humans and Zethurians can really be friends?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled. "I believe we can. We've already taken the first steps. Every act of kindness, every moment of trust makes a difference. We have to keep believing and keep trying." Liara nodded, her eyes reflecting the colors of the setting sun. "I believe too." Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come to the palace unsure of what awaited him. He had faced alien protocols, skepticism, and the unknown. Yet through courage, respect, and connection, he had not only gained a friend in Liara, but had also shown the palace that humans could be brave, wise, and honorable. As night fell and the palace glittered with countless lights, Ethan realized that he had not just survived the challenges of the alien world, he had helped shape it. The human presence that had once seemed fragile and limited was now a beacon of hope and trust within the vast palace. The princess's trust, earned and cherished, had transformed more than Ethan himself. It had shifted the palace's perception of humanity. The bonds they had built would endure, and through them, a new chapter for humans and Zethurians alike was beginning. Ethan knew that life in the palace would continue to present challenges. There would be political intrigues, unknown threats, and difficult decisions. But he also knew that he and Liara had discovered something rare: friendship, trust, and the power to change hearts, even in the most rigid and grand places. As he looked at the young princess sleeping peacefully that night, he felt a quiet certainty. No matter what came next, they would face it together. The bond between human and alien had been forged in courage and kindness, and nothing, not tradition, not fear, nor power, could undo it. In the quiet brilliance of the palace, Ethan finally understood that he had found not only a friend in Liara, but a place in a world far beyond his own. And in that place, where the entire palace once froze at a simple hug, he had discovered something timeless: the strength of connection, the power of trust, and the courage to be human in an alien world.